Good morning, guys. Guys, in the today's session, let us will continue our discussion on SQL queries. In the previous session, we took one real world example. That means what we are solving a scenario, and behind every database tables there could be a story, right? So we discussed about one such interesting story behind all the tables, right? So then after that, we have successfully identified that keys in the given scenario, right, in the tables, primary keys and foreign keys and all, and how to connect one and the other tables. Then after that, we discussed about how to create tables with proper primary keys and foreign keys, all such things we have seen. And after that, we learned one more interesting thing, especially when we are creating a table and as well as inserting a values, what order to be followed. So for that, we can make the things very easily with very less number of effort. That means we can avoid that making use of alter command again and again. Suppose if we plan it properly, that means the order of creating a table and as well as the order of inserting a values by analyzing the proper primary and foreign keys which are there in the table, right? So that we have seen. Next, in the today's session, guys, I think we have successfully created all tables of our scenario, right? Then we have inserted values also. So, but and primary keys, foreign keys, everything we have discussed as what I said earlier. Then in the today's session, will try to solve few queries on that scenario, right? So for that, we will get an idea of how to write queries for a whole scenario where it contains a bunch of tables, right? So this is what our objective. So prior to that, I will take you to the, I will try to recall the statement, what exactly the scenario we discussed. The scenario we discussed is where it contains this many tables. That means branch, student, book, author, and as well as borrow table, right? So with the help of these tables, even here also it is visible, right? So the story behind all these tables is a branch contains, that means a college. It's all about a college or a school you can consider. A college contains many branches, right? A branch having a ID, name and all, right? Where we are uniquely identifying based on branch ID. Then after that, we discussed about and each branch having a HOD. Then after that, a student, a college contains usually a student, there are many students and each student belongs to only one branch, but a branch contains many students, right? So this is what we have discussed, and student belongs to some semester and all. Then after that, we discussed about a book. There could be plenty of books in a library. There is a huge collection, let's assume, and each book belongs to to some branch. Then after there are some authors. Let's for time being, we took one such small example that a book always written by only one author. We concised our scenario to that. That means an author can write many books and a book was written by only one author and a book having a publisher, right? So this also we have discussed. Then after this, author table where it contains a list of authors, right? And he belongs to some country and each are identified based on author ID. Then after that, we discussed about a borrow table, right? So where this borrow indicates, that means this gives us an information related to which student borrowed which book, right, on what date, all such things it gives. So we created a separate table, even that also we have discussed. Why? So we created this borrow table because we have to exhibit a relationship of many to many. It's an indication that a student can borrow many books, right, at either on the same day or at different dates. And a same book could be borrowed by many students, right? So on different dates. So this is what the scenario we want to show, that constraint, and we have successfully shown. And these are all the primary and foreign keys, and these are all some relationships that I have shown. So let me take you to that solving of queries. So let me take you to the MySQL. Yes, command prompt. Yes, ready. So we'll go with writing of query. Already have logged into that MySQL and as well as the database and as well as have displayed all tables. So this is what a branch table where it contains 3 branches. We have viewed a branch ID as 1, 2, 3 and so on. And student table contains USN, name, address and all. Then author table where have viewed different IDs. So for that easily we can able to interpret answer, whether that answer is what we are getting is the right answer or not. So you can make use of same ID, no issues. That also have explained in the previous session itself. and a book we took 100 series, so 100, 101 and so on, and there is a borrow table where it links that USN with a book table, right, the student with a book table, which student borrowed which book on what date, fine. So we'll go with taking up the first query. So we'll start. The first query is like this, guys. List the details of the students, who are all studying in second sem MCA. Students who are all studying in second sem MCA, that I want to display. So always, guys, when we want to solve any query, the first thing we have to analyze is to get this table. That means writing of a query is as similar to going to a market and buying whatever the things we want, that items, right. So since that market consists of many shops, there's a vegetable shop, there's a grain shop, right, many cloth shop, many other shops, right. Here also same thing, there are many tables, right. So we won't get all such things in a single table. Where we want to, a market contains, it's a bundle of many shops, right. So where I need to visit many shops depending upon the requirement, right. So what item I want, so based on that I should visit that particular shop and I want to pick whatever I want, right. So here also same thing, guys. Here we are having a bunch of tables where I want to pick that items. That means I want to visit to a particular shop and I want to retrieve the things as whatever I want, right. So depending on the requirement. So first, it is an indication that before writing a query, so based on the query, first we have to build a mathematical model. How to build a mathematical model? That means a logic, first we have to find out. So once if we are successful in building a logic, then writing of a query is very simple, damn easy, right. So let me go with the first question. As per this question, list the details, we'll try to analyze. List the details of students who are all studying in second sem MCA. They are asking us to retrieve student details who are studying in second sem MCA. So for that, when I see this table, guys, then can you tell me which table is very much required to solve this query, to answer this query? The talking about retrieve student details, definitely it requires student table to make use, right. So let me go with writing in between. It requires student table to make use, yes, right. And they are all studying in which semester? They are all studying in second sem, right, second sem. Whether we get a sem data in a student table, yes, we'll get a sem data. We are having a sem kind of an attribute here, right. So we can make use of a sem here. So for that, 1 minute, I'll close this projector. Later we'll go with its execution, right. So we are having a sem. So in a student table, our interesting attribute is they are asking us to retrieve student details, right, retrieve student details. Belongs to, their sem should be what? 2, their semester should be equal to 2, and their branch should be what? Equal to MCA, right. This is what student, this is what they want to retrieve. What all such students of this kind you retrieve. This is what a diagram I can write, right. So for this question we have represented in terms of this diagram. Retrieve the students S1, S2, S3 of different kind, right. So student table is required and their semester should be what? Look at this one. Question says semester should be 2, sem equal to 2, and as well as what? And branch name should be equal to what? MCA. They should belongs to a branch MCA. Can I get a branch name in a student table? Look at this one, guys. So USN, name, address, BID we are having, sem we are having, but we don't have a branch name, then where I get a branch name, guys? Oh, branch name is present in a branch table, right? I'll get it in a branch table. So B name equal to MCA, that I want to write, but to write a B name, I should make use of even branch table also to solve this query, right? But whether we have used a branch table here? No, So let me call, add one more table. What is that? Branch, right? Let me call the name branch B, fine. Branch B, I can call. Then student, I'll make use of an aliasing called student, branch B, fine. There's one more condition I want to add. What is that? Sem equal to 2 and branch name. Sem belongs to which table? Sem belongs to student table. Student means what? Yes. Let me write yes dot sem equal to 2. We'll have a habit of making use of aliasing along with attribute. So for that, in further, right, when we are writing a complex, when we are solving a complex queries, during that time, definitely it helps us, right? So it becomes an habit, So for that. So let me go with the branch B, let me make use of branch name, B name, right? We are having a B name, it is present in, there is a branch name present in a branch table. Branch means what? B. Let me write B dot B name should be equal to what, guys? As per diagram says the question that MCA branch name should be equal to MCA and semester equal to 2. Super. So where to write these table names, guys? The table names to be written in a from class. Let me write from student, yes, branch B, fine. Then what else to be written? Is it over? No. Because I am having a branch name here, I am having a branch ID here, and here student detail and branch details. But there should be some bridging attribute between a branch and a student. Otherwise, it becomes, already I told you, if I write two table names in a from class, suppose if I miss to write that common attribute joining condition, then what happens? Then it becomes what, Cartesian product, where it contains spurious tuples, that means unwanted tuples, right? So it becomes just a tuple multiplication, right? That we should not want, right? What we want? What we want is that matching tuples. So for that, what is the bridging attribute? How I can connect the student with a branch? That is one common attribute. What is that, guys? Is that USN? No. That means I know USN, name and all, semester I know. So let's say sem equal to 2 I got, their branch ID I got, that student branch ID. But I want to check whether that branch ID is what I get here, something what 10 or 1 or 2 something, that I want to verify whether that one branch ID 1 or a 2 is what I am listing here, whether it is equal to, whether it belongs to MCA branch or not. To get it, without visiting a branch table, I cannot get it, right? So for that, when I ask, hey, branch ID 1, whether are you belongs to an MCA, that means branch ID 1, whether you are representing an MCA, when I say suddenly that BID takes us to where? It takes us to a branch table, and it compares with the BID of a branch table. So for that, so when I am using a student at a branch table in a from class, then I should write a logic of joining two tables with the help of this common attribute, that means a foreign key, that is student.bid should be equal to what? Where it takes to a branch of BID. Let me go with adding and BID. Just writing a BID itself is enough. No, again this creates an ambiguity, right? So how can I resolve this ambiguity? Because BID, suddenly SQL compiler in the dilemma is, it is in ambiguous condition. That means whether this BID, I am having two BIDs. As per this, student table also contains a BID and branch table also contains a BID. So that it is in the dilemma, right? So whether this BID belongs to student or should I consider it from a branch, right? So very difficult thing to resolve this. So for that, we should not give it for an SQL, that means to that compiler. Instead of that, we have to specify clearly that BID, this belongs to student and this belongs to branch. Sir, a few of my friends are having a question like this. Sir, what happens when I write b.bid equal to s.bid? Since it is an equivalent condition, no, nothing will happen. You can write whatever, however you want, right? So no issues, fine. So that itself is enough? No, what's the purpose of writing all such things? I want to retrieve such students, To do that, how can I retrieve? Which class of SQL query to make use? Select query. Yes, select. Then what are the things you want to retrieve? You want to retrieve USN, or if you want to retrieve all, you can write star. If not, if you are very much particular about any of the few attributes, that means interesting attribute, during the time mention those attribute names, that's it. So I want USN present in which table? Student table, right? So let me write student means what? Yes. Let me write yes.usn, fine. Then what next? I want their name present again in a student table, so that let me write yes.name, fine. What next? I want their address. If you want, you can write yes.address, fine. Sam, if you required, you can write whatever you want, that's it. Put semicolon, that's all, guys. This is what a query. So let me go with exploring, that means we'll go with typing a query, whether we get an answer or not, we'll see it. I'll take you to the SQL. we said we require, what we did? First we decided which are all the tables are required. As per this example, we said we require two tables. One is a student table. Let me write student, yes. Then the second table which is required is a branch. Let me write a branch B. Fine. Then what we did? We did how to connect two tables. That we did. It is by using a common attribute called BID, right? This one, right? So S dot BID should be equal to B dot BID. Fine. Then and semester of a student, semester present in student table, so that S dot sem, right? S dot sem is equal to what? It should be equal to 2. Not only that, the student must belongs to where? He belongs to MCA department. That means branch name. MCA represents what? Branch name, fine. So let me go with writing branch name B dot B name should be equal to MCA. Let me write, fine. What else? That's it. Logic things are over. The next thing is to retrieve. Let me write select S dot USN, fine. Then S dot name, then S dot SAM, S dot address, then S dot B name. If you want, you can get extract whatever you want. Things are over. We have written a query, right? Let me press enter. What I'll get? So we got unknown column B name. Let me see. So for that, how can I solve this error, guys? To resolve this error, so look at this one, how beautifully that compiler is giving an error. That means conveying us, so where I should do some changes, right? Where I should rectify this error, right? So unknown column S dot B name, it's an indication that student table doesn't have a B name kind of an attribute. Do we have a B name here? No, yeah. B name, it is present in branch table. Look at this one, right? So let me go to this select class where I have written a branch name. No, not select, where B dot branch name. It is right, but in the select class have mentioned, look at this one, S dot B name. This is what have made a mistake. There I'll replace this S by B, because since it belongs to a branch table. That's it. Enter. Yes, look at this one, guys. 10, 11, Arjun, Balu to Mysore MCA. Those two are the students who are all belongs to MCA. Let me check whether it is right or not. Which all the tables are required? Select star from student. Yes, then select star from branch. Yes, fine. So MCA means what? 1. Not only branch ID should be equal to 1, and their sum also must belongs to 2. That's it, right? Fine. We got answer, because branch ID 1 means MCA, sum 2 only 10 and 11, right? It is not retrieving 12, right? Our answer is right. Let me go with taking up a second query now. Next query. Second question is like this. List the students who are all not borrowed any books. List the students who have not borrowed any books. So can you tell me, guys, how can I solve this query? So students who have not borrowed any books. So which table is required? To solve this table, definitely to display such kind of a student, I should require a student table, fine. But how can I say the student borrowed a books or not? Here I want only the list who have not borrowed any books, such kind of students. To get it, definitely I required even borrow table also. One thing is very much simple, right? So that is, let me go with displaying a student table. Select star from student. And one more is borrow. Students who are all there, can I say, so based on this data, can we say that what could be the right answer? Which USN becomes a right answer? Always write a query based on a key attribute. Suppose if you are successful in retrieving a key attribute, then retrieving its corresponding name is damn easy, right? Easily we can able to get it. So as per this data, definitely I can say 10, 11. These two USNs are present in the borrow table. It's an indication that such USN, such students have borrowed at least one books, right? Because at least one entry is present here. But look at this one, 12. That USN 12 is not at all present in a borrow table. It's an indication that 12 has not borrowed any books, right? So 12 corresponding name Ramu, that I want to display. So the logic we thought here is, so we have to retrieve a student USN which should not be present in a borrow table, right? USN should not be present in borrow table list of USNs. This is what a logic I want to build. So let me go with writing a query, then later we'll go with executing, right? So tables which are required to solve this is borrow and as well as student. Let me write, it requires student table, fine. Let me write student, yes, fine. And even it requires borrow table. Let me write borrow B, fine. So table name, where to write? It always to be written in a from class. Let me write, it is, I am going to write it in a from class, from. Could be simple, right? What's the next step? We are saying borrow table contains a list of USN. How can I list all USNs of borrow table? Borrow table USNs, how can I list? B.USN. Let me write B.USN, right? Fine, B.USN. How can I retrieve? Always to be written in a select class. Let me write select B.USN. Fine. Only when I write this much of code, select B.USN from borrow, what I'll get? I'll get all list of USNs who are all, that means the students who have borrowed a books as per the previous example. That means our example, for this part of a query, what answer will get? 10 and 11 become a answer, right? So let me go with solving this one. So we will get USN 10 and 11 because those two students have borrowed a books. What I want? Students USN should not be present in this list. So for that, yeah, what I can write? Yes.USN, this USN should not be in the list of borrow table USN. Since it contains multi-set result, look at this one, 10, 11, 12, it could be hundreds of data, hundreds of USNs could be what retrieved by this subquery. Then how can I compare? Here always it picks each row and checks whether it is not there in the list, right? Not there in the list or not. So for that, when I want to compare each USN, 10 it picks, and I want to compare this 10 with multi-set results, multiple values, then how can I compare? Can I do just with a not equal to? Because we are looking for 10 should not be in the list. So for that, the operator to be used is not equal to kind. But when I make use of not equal to directly, when I say not equal to says, I said in one of the example, not equal to and equal to can have only a capacity to compare only two quantities at a single instance of time. But when subquery retrieves some multi-set results like 10, 11, 12, many things like this, right? So during the time that not equal to or equal to says no, I cannot compare, right? So what I required? Its extended version. Suppose if subquery returns multi-set result, during that time I should make use of not in operator. Let me go with making use of not in. Yes.USN should not be in the list, right? So where should I write this one? This I want to write it in a where class, that's it, right? Then I want to retrieve that corresponding student details. If I want to retrieve that respective USN and a name, yes.USN, yes.name, then where should I write? This I want to write it in a select class, that's it. Select. Look at this one, guys. We have written subquery and we have written its outer query, right? So easily we have solved, right? That's it. 10 should not be in the list, no, wrong. 11 not in the list, again wrong, right? Because all these two things becomes false. But when USN becomes 12, 12 is not in the list, yes, things becomes true, then it retrieves 12 and corresponding name, that's it. Let me go with, is that things are quite easy, you know, easily we can able to solve a query, right? So let me go with coding this one. So what we did is, first we decided which all the two tables are required. First we listed who are all the students. We went with the opposite approach. That means students who have borrowed a books. It requires what? From borrow, we visited borrow B, right? And what we did is, we retrieved all USNs from borrow, B.USN. It's an indication that all such students have borrowed some books, right? When I write, yes, 10, 11, we got answer, right? Fine, it's over. Then what we did? We visited student table, right? We visited student table, student, fine, student, yes. There we said where s.usn should not be in the list of that borrow table. Then retrieve this corresponding, select s.usn, s.name, right? So that's it from student. Look at this one, 12 Ramu, we got the right answer, right? Fine. Let me go with that next query now. It's time to move to the next query. Let me go to the next slide now. Sorry. This one. What's the query here? Display the USN, student name, branch name, book name, author name, book borrowed date of second sem MCA students who have borrowed books. Oh, could be a very big question. Looks big, but things are very simple. What's that, guys? They're asking us to retrieve student name, USN, student name, branch name, book name, author name, and books borrowed date of second sem MCA. That means student should belongs to second sem. As usual, they're asking. And their SEM should be equal to MCA. This is what a criteria they're asking, SEM should be equal to 2 and branch name, B name should be equal to what? MCA. This is what they're asking. Fine. Then what are the things to retrieve? They're asking us to retrieve their not only student and branch details, even they are looking for book name and author name also. It's an indication that where I can get a student details, I can get it in student table. Branch details here, where I can get a book details, it requires book table. And displaying a book detail, I cannot directly connect that book with the student, right? Because I want the student should be borrowed some books. How can I get the data? The data can be obtained only when I make use of a borrow table, right? When student USN, when it is there in a borrow table, it is an indication that student have borrowed a books. So I will get a book ID. So when I ask what is your name, that book ID, then that book ID takes us to where? To a book table. Then retrieve that corresponding book name. I got a book name, but how can I get an author name? Even they are asking us to display author name. So I got that book name. Based on this book name, that corresponding AID is there. When I ask what is your name, then author ID takes us to author table. Then I can retrieve a author details. So for that, to solve this query, guys, what all the tables are required? We require student table, we require book, branch, borrow, author. Oh, almost all, almost all. But we never forget of writing a joining attribute condition between the tables. What all the joining attributes to make use? First, student must belongs to MCA, second sem equal to 2, I can write here only. And brand name equal to MCA, it requires the conditions to be written on this attribute. So for that, I want to join student with branch. How? Student.bid should be equal to branch.bid. Fine. What next? So I got student and he belongs to which branch. Then I want to find out all his borrowed books. So whether the student borrowed a books or not, when I ask, suddenly it takes us to where? It takes us to borrow table. In the borrow table, student.usn should be equal to borrow.usn. It's an indication that so all such students have borrowed a books. Then how can I get a book name? So I'm having a book ID in a borrow table. Take this book ID, it takes us to where? To a book table, right? Then I'll get a book name. Then how can I get an author name? So make use of this AID and it takes us to author table, display author name. It's an indication that s.usn should be equal to borrow.usn. Then borrow.book ID should be equal to book.book ID. Then book.aid should be equal to author.aid. That's it. Let me go with exploring. So prior to that, let me go with writing of this query. So how? Which all that first write down all tables which are all required from. So first student, yes. Then branch we used, right? Branch B. Let me write. Then we require borrow. Let me write borrow BR. Then we require book BK. Then we require author. Let me write author A. Fine. What's the next step? I want to join. First we'll go with joining. How? student, prior to that they said student's semester should be equal to 2, student yes, yes dot sem equal to 2, let me write, fine, and their branch name, so condition on this attribute, and B name, branch name belongs to branch table, branch means what, B dot B name should be equal to MCL, let me write. So what is the next step? I want to join these two, how? Based on this BID. So for that S dot BID should be equal to what? B dot branch ID, B dot BID, fine, let me write, fine. These two tables are joined. Then what's the next step? I want to check whether this student have borrowed a book or not. How can I get? This USN should be present in borrow table USN. So for that ES dot USN should be equal to borrow. Borrow means what? BR. BR dot USN. It's an indication that definitely the student have borrowed a books. What's the next step? I want to retrieve that respective book name. I got this borrow which all the students have borrowed a books, and I want their name, book name. To get it, borrow table book ID should be equal to book table book ID. So borrow means BR. BR dot book ID is equal to book means what? BK. BK dot book ID. That itself? No. That itself is not enough. Why? We required even author name also. In the author table, in the book table I am having a AID. With the help of this AID I can get a author name, right? So for that, book means what? BK. BK dot AID should be equal to what? Author dot AID, right? That's it. I'll get an author name. Then just retrieve whatever you want. That's it. So how? In the select class, select. Look at this one. Almost all tables are joined, right? Fine. So select s.usn. I want such student s.name, and they belongs to which branch? s.bname. So MC will get. Then after this, they're asking us to retrieve that book name. So book name is present in where? In the book table, bk dot bk name, book name, fine. And I want that author name. Author name is present in author table, so that a dot a name I can write, fine. What's the next step? Even I want to retrieve that author name, book name, that's a borrow date, right? So borrow date is present in br dot b date, borrow date. Look at this one, borrow b date, that's it. So that's all, simple, you know. So from this we learned how to join multiple tables, that to what, with help of these common attributes, that means with the help of foreign keys. So this is a query where we'll go with, we'll come across with joining almost all tables of our database, right? So let me go with coding. So tables which are required is from student, yes, next book, bk, sorry, branch we used, anything you can write, no issues, branch b, then book bk, right? So what next? We used author, a. So better that I'll take out all these things. Author A. What next? Student borrow table we required, borrow br, fine. What next? I want to write a query where I want to join all attributes in the where class. Let me write where s dot sum equal to 2 and b dot b name should be equal to MCA, fine, and what, the common attribute s dot bid, branch id should be equal to what, branch dot bid, b dot bid, branch id, and s dot usn, because whether the student have borrowed books or not, s dot usn should be equal to borrow table dot br dot usn, and I got a borrow table book id. Then how can I get its name? So borrow dot book id should be equal to book dot book id. So br dot book id should be equal to bk dot book ID, fine. Then I will get that book name, but how can I get author name? Book.bk.aid should be equal to author.aid. Then I will get author name. Almost all are connected. Now let me go with displaying all things. Select s.usn, then s.name, then s.sem if you want, right? Then b.bname, then after this bk.bkname, that means book name, then after this author name I want a.a name, that's it, fine, enter. So showing error, what could be the error? Let me check. So they're asking, they're showing, you have one error in SQL syntax, check your MariaDB server, they're asking student yes, a name something. So let me check what could be the error. That means could be that naming convention as what we have used. In the author table, we are having a name, AID, fine. Branch BID, book BKID. Yes, almost all things are right. Let me check what could be the thing. In the select I have missed E, right? SLECT, no, wrong. I should write select, that's it. Unknown column br.bookid, yes. Let me check where we have written br.bookid, whether borrow contains a book ID or not. Yes, we are having br.bookid. Whether we have got a book ID or a beak ID, let me check. Look at this one. Always that attribute naming convention are all important. Borrow we are having what? Beak ID. But in the query we have written book ID. That's why it's showing a error. So let me replace it by what? Beak ID. That's it. Here also beak ID. Book. In the book table also I have used beak ID. That's it. Yes, we got answer, right? 10 borrowed 3 books, 11 borrowed 1 book. What all the books? Author names all are we are getting. So let me go with solving that. Next query now, the fourth query. Display the number of books written by each author. Each author written how many books that I want to retrieve. So to solve this query, which all the tables are required? First, I will try to display the data. To solve this, I required which author ID written how many books. First I want to retrieve like this. So for that it retrieves just author? No, author only gives me an information related to only that author details. It doesn't give any hint about whether this author has written a book or not. So for that, how can I get? I can get it from a book table. Select star from book, because in the book table we are having list of books and as well as that respective authors, right? Books as well as that author. It's an indication that with the help of this author I can easily say each author has written how many books. As per this data, can you tell me guys how many books written by each author? We'll say 200 written, 2 books. 201 written, 1 book. Have we said? Because 200 occurred twice. Yes, that means inside our mind what we did is we grouped based on this author ID. All similar things one group, right? So to all 200 we made one group and 201 we made as one group, and we counted how many book IDs. Since this BK ID is a primary key, so for that we can go with counting a book ID or count a ID, that also okay, but always could be try to become more perfect with respect to writing of a particular specific attribute, especially in a aggregate function. In future I'll tell you definitely that plays a major role guys. We counted how many each author written how many books, right? Like that we have counted. So we got this count as 1 and this count as this count as 2, 1, 2, right? And this as 1. That's it. Let me go with writing a query. How? So we used a book table, fine, book BK, let me write. Then what we did? We grouped based on what? Author ID. So group by bk.aid, author ID, fine. What next? Display each author along with how many books, author ID. So how can I display? With the help of select class. Select bk.aid, AID, then count, apply a count on each group in a count. Count what? Count book IDs. So BK dot BKID, book ID, that's it. Enter. Look at this one guys, 200 with 2 books, 201 with 1 book. Then how can I get these corresponding names of this author? I got this 200, that means author IDs, but I want their name. To get their name, when I ask what is your name 200, then suddenly it takes us to AID, takes us to where? Takes us to author table, right? So let me go with making use of author table in the from class, right? From author A, right? And one common attribute condition to join these two tables. How? bk.aid should be equal to what? a.aid. Look at this one. Book table AID should be equal to author table AID, then retrieve that corresponding author details, author name. That's it. Let me go to author table, select class. Let me write a.a name. That's it. Fine. So what's the problem? Showing from book BK author A where there's a mistake with respect to that the naming convention. Let me go with verifying. Group by bk.aid. Look at this one guys, the convention, the syntax, where we made a mistake. Any guesses? Look at this one. Between the attributes during retrieval, we have to separate each one by a comma, right? We have missed it here. So for that, let me write that one. That's it. We got answer. 200, name something. That's it. We got answer, right? So from this we learned that means how to group it and how to join all tables, right? How we never forget that joining attribute condition, right? Especially suppose when we are making use of multiple tables when writing a queries, right? During writing of queries, we should never forget all such things that we have learned, right? So then how to group? So based on the question, all such things we have learned, right? So thank you guys. Thanks for your patience listening. Fine.